Eventually, all the pieces fall into place. But until then, laugh at the confusion, live for the moments, and know everything happens for a reason. Welcome to Wandering the Wild Mess with Heather Morgan. I am so happy you're here. So, we're going to go into a little bit of a mess about what I'm saying about everything happening for a reason. So, I have been doing a lot of reflecting lately on just where I'm going. And I think, as we know, starting over, unfortunately, it's almost like, okay, I want to do it right this time. And so, for anyone with an overthinking mind, starting over can seem all the more difficult because all you can do is know all the mistakes you made, which is great. You're coming with information, but you're just so overthinking things. And I realized one of the really positive things when all of my life was evolving and changing and I didn't know like what was going on is that I did, and I still do, but a little of that was taken from me, have this like carefree personality and heart and just going with the flow. So I want to kind of revisit a story that I haven't yet shared of wild me in the wild when I first got to Tennessee. So speaking of all the right things will happen and I wanted to talk about the right people coming into your life. So let's get into it. When I first came to Nashville, I've stated that I had Airbnbs for the first 3 months. So in my third Airbnb, there was a time where I was really just going to live it up before I was going to settle down and move into a permanent place. And there was this bar that was like walkable from the third Airbnb I was at. Well, it was like a bar restaurant. And at the time, I was working so many hours, but I was, working remotely. So I would just decide that I'd take my laptop, walk over to this bar, sit at the bar by myself, do a little work, but I'm out of the house and I'm around people because I have no friends at this point and I'm not in an office. So I had been to this bar probably like a few times, maybe. And so it was probably like my second or third time coming in. And I'm there for a little while and it's at this time there a lot of regulars. So maybe it was like my third time. I could tell there was a regular crowd, people I'd seen before. So probably like an hour into me being there, if that, this guy comes in and he's just like, and I'm saying this because like, if you know me, and I don't know, most people are probably not like this from what I'm experiencing and learning from people, but me, like my one of my friends said this about me and it's so true. Is like she said, you don't have a type, you have a vibe. And so like if someone asked me what's your type, I mean, I was married for so long, I never really thought about that. And then now in this whole new world, I'm like, it's more for me about how they carry themselves and how they make me feel. And like something about their vibe is what pulls me into a person. It's not like specifically what they look like because I could notice that. And then as soon as their vibe is one way, I'm like, oh, never mind. So, anyways, this guy comes in and he just has this like vibe, I guess. This is before she told me, but like just this kind of aura around him, just very charismatic seeming. And everyone at the bar was like, oh, hey, and like talking to him. And I can kind of like overhear him just conversing back. And I'm thinking, like the confidence in the way he's speaking and how kind he's being to the people that are talking to him. And I'm like, who, like, this guy's just kind of different. And I'm super just intrigued by his energy. So he ends up, but he's not really like giving me any, like, he's not really looking at me, which, what, it's fine. And so he sits down though at the bar, kind of by me, but he's still like in his own little world, and a ton of people are talking to him. And I end up saying something which is funny because there's rare times that I will really say something first to a man. But if I feel like I'm supposed to, and in the way supposed to, I don't know how to explain it other than like I feel like I'm supposed to be the one to say something here because I feel like this person's supposed to be in my life for some reason. But it's weird because at the time I don't know if they're going to be in my life, but there's just this pull to be like, you should say something. And I don't know how to explain that. So I say, oh, wow, you sure know a lot of people here. What are you, like a drug dealer? Which I don't think I've ever asked anyone in my whole life that. Like it's not even something I would normally say, so it's still weird to me I did. And he kind of laughed and he was like, "No, I used to bartend here." So I just knew everybody, and I don't bartend here anymore, so but yeah, basically. And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense." And then it was just like it. Like I was like, "Well, okay, I guess maybe nothing." Well, probably only like 10 minutes later in, I don't even know how we began to speak to each other again. And we're just like engulfed in conversation about who knows what. And suddenly we went from like this weird thing that I said to like, oh my gosh, we're having this great conversation. We're hitting it off. We're just talking about everything. So he buys me a couple of drinks and we're still just talking, and the bar is getting, it's getting ready to close. And at this point I wasn't planning on being there so late or having these drinks that I'm being offered. And so he's like, yeah, like obviously wasn't going to drive, but where I was staying was walkable. So I was like, oh, I'm just staying over there. He's like, oh, I have friends that, live there. I'm like, oh, great. He's like, well, you can leave your car here and be safe, like where I parked. And he was like, so, but do you want me to walk you back to your place? Cause it was late. So I was like, sure. So we leave my car and we leave the bar and we decide to walk hand in hand, mind you, like this complete stranger, charismatic stranger. We're walking down the street to my Airbnb. And so we get to the building and he's coming up, and like again, I realize that I met this person like an hour ago. So maybe by my lack of good judgment, I'm just bringing this stranger back, but I don't know. Here I am, messy, doing whatever, don't really know. This person is like a great conversationalist. And as someone that's been working from home and doesn't have any friends in Nashville, it's been great. So we get into my spot and open the door, and immediately he goes to the dog, my cute dog. And for me, that's always the vibe. So I was right about this person, because anyone that enters my home and their first inkling is to like react to my dog and give my dog attention, like you've sold me. Like that's the kind of energy I want in my life. So he's carrying on with the dog, and I'm like, see, this is going to be just fine. Like I already know. So we proceeded to hang out, and if you know me, like he was just so smart in this different way. Like such an intellectual, just such a great mind, very different than a lot of people like that I talk to. I was just so really impressed by him. And I don't really feel that way about a lot of people. I'm not normally impressed. And it probably impressed me more that he wasn't seemingly trying to impress me. He just felt very authentic. And I loved that. So we're talking and I learn all these things about him. He was originally from Nashville, like born and raised. He had like a really interesting life, and probably not like an ideal upbringing necessarily, but just very like just a good overall person. And his dad had passed away too. So he had just had his mom. And so we had like a lot of conversations on that deeper level. Well, anyways, you know, next thing you know, he's leaving. It's like who knows what time in the morning, super, super late. And we kind of just like part ways and just kind of agree. Like he's like, how long are you going to be in this Airbnb? And I'm like another month. And he's like, should we just hang out while you're in this Airbnb? And I feel like it was almost kind of like, okay, while you're in this Airbnb, then we'll hang out. And then because he lived close. And then after that, maybe we won't, which whatever. Like I'm literally just this carefree, like for whatever. I'm not in a position to want much of anything, but I'm so in my, I really just am like attracted to his mind. So he ends up leaving and we still talk and try to make plans. So don't worry, he's a bartender still. So it's, again, not probably like my most ideal situation for someone, but I'm no judgment. I was a bartender once, but that's not really like a relationship thing, but it was perfect cuz I'm not really looking for that. So, whatever. So, we're hanging out for like the time that I'm there. I see him a couple more times and each time I'm just like, gosh, like there was just so many things. He was just so in touch with like a different side of himself and it was very like refreshing. And a lot of our conversations still cross my mind just because of the depth of our conversations. So, anyways, we spend some time together while I'm there. And then once I move to Hendersonville, which is about 35 minutes away from that area, if not more, then it kind of just like drops off. We like text here and there, we try to connect, doesn't really happen. Well, finally, it's about this time last year, like September of last year. And he hits me up and finally was like, I have some making up to do. I would love to see you. Can I come over? He comes over. And it was interesting because he gets here and we just are like talking. Like, I think he literally came at like 5 or 6, and we just like talked the whole time about everything under the moon. Like, this man, like, I feel like I know so much about him. And we were talking about something and, he had this someone that he had dated previously, like an ex-girlfriend for forever ago. Like, he had to go back to wherever she lived because her father passed away and he didn't really, or a family member, he didn't, yeah, it was her father. Didn't really wanna, or I don't think he necessarily wanted to go, but it would be rude and she would be upset, and so he kinda had to go. And I was like, "Oh." I was like, "Well, when my dad passed, my ex-boyfriend, his dad came, but he didn't, and I just kinda thought maybe it would be hard for him, so he couldn't make it." So and he goes and he, like, stops, like, dead in his tracks staring at me. We're, like, sitting across the kitchen table. And I was just mentioning it because I had never thought about being mad at my ex for not coming to my dad's funeral. Like, we weren't together, and I mean, I don't know. And he was like, "You are so kind. You're thinking about your ex-boyfriend's feelings instead of your own when your dad died." And I was like, I mean, I didn't really think of it like that. I was just saying he maybe doesn't it'd maybe be hard for him to come see me, see my dad, all the things. And then he looks again and says, "I date crazy women that throw chairs through my window or get hysterically crazy angry when things don't go their way. I don't even know what to do with someone like you." And it was like, it's interesting because unless you like talk to people with different experiences or perspectives, you don't realize how much what you perceive as normal in your mind is strange to someone else. And so, like, all of the conversations with this man just made me see so many different sides. I mean, we had very different upbringings, just so much difference in our life. And I I just obviously I already knew like we weren't going anywhere and he was younger as well than me, but he also just I mean our lives were just completely different. I mean it wasn't never going to I don't think that's where we ever thought that was where it was heading, but it was just becoming more blatantly obvious as we talked, but it was like there was just still something there. So when he left the next morning, I remember just kinda knowing, like, I think that was, like, the closure because there was a lot of thoughts with this guy that I was just like, "Gosh, I just wanna see him again," because I just his mind makes me feel things I don't normally feel. And so after that, you know, trip that he came over and all the conversations we had, which were great, I mean, I think I just knew it was the closure and it was just gonna be like, "Okay, see ya." So, it was fine. And I remember, like, we had talked about his mom, and he had mentioned that, like, if his mom wasn't doing too great in her health, and if she passed, he would be like an orphan. Well, not an orphan, but, like, he wouldn't have parents anymore. And again, he was, like, younger than me, and I thought that in my head about losing my mother now. And so there was just so many things we could talk about, I guess, that not everyone, like, can relate to. So anyways, this man, after that, it was kinda just I feel like mutual for both of us, like, where was this possibly going? And, I thought of him weirdly, and it was, like, such a weird, strong, like, thought. Like, I wonder what I don't even know what to call him, Nashville bartender is doing. Like, I just am thought of him. I kid you not. I can't make this up. It was like on a night, it was like a Monday night, and just he crossed my mind. It's not like I normally did because this wasn't that long ago. And I was just, he crossed my mind. The next morning, I get a text message. Hadn't talked to him in literally months and months and months, like last year. And I get a text message and it says, "Hello, dear. You've always been so kind and thoughtful to me, and I've honestly been an asshole in return. I don't really know how to allow kindness and love into my life. This is me sincerely apologizing. My mom just passed away, and a lot of things just came into focus for me. I want to say that I'm sorry for being insensitive, distant, and foreboding. You deserve more than that. You don't have to respond to this. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I had some growing up to do recently, and I recently did it. I hope you can forgive me. If not, I absolutely understand." I was like, I cannot believe that he texted me after I just thought of him. I wasn't even angry at anything. I didn't feel necessarily that he was rude. I kind of think I just understood him in a way that maybe he didn't realize I understood because I really wasn't expecting anything from him. And I think I understood what, you know, maybe weirdly why we had even met. And I think I kind of didn't know how to respond, but then suddenly these just words just came out of my I started typing away. And I'm sharing this only because I think there's just people in your life that you know aren't going to be there forever, but there's just this purpose in why they're there for that moment. And there are discussions that you needed to have, there are thoughts you needed to think about, there's perspectives you needed to see. And it was because you were just like open to them, like everything happening for a reason. So I wrote, "Hi, Nashville bartender. I am so very sorry to hear about your mother's passing. I know how much you meant to each other, could see it in your eyes and hear it in your voice. I know the pain of losing a parent and that there are really no words, but if you ever need someone to listen or vent feelings to, I can be a listening ear. Just know you're not alone in the grief. Appreciate so much for the kind words and apology. I have no anger or any ill feelings towards you in any way. I understood that we were in very different headspaces, and that's completely okay. Probably what intrigued me about you in the first place. But thank you for thinking of me. Really means a lot." I feel like sometimes instead of being angry when you're not getting what you think you want from something in your life, you just have to realize that it was just there for a reason. It taught you something, it gave you something you needed to hear or you needed to see or you needed to feel. And when it, you know, I feel like that girl that I was and I'm trying to get back to even more, she just knew it all works out for me. So this interaction with this human, like I left some impression on their life and he left one on mine. Then the wildest thing happened. Before I went to Utah, I was running some errands in Hendersonville and I decided to stop by the Rudder, this marina bar close to my house. And I go and I wasn't gonna go there, I was gonna go somewhere else. It was one of those moments where you're like, "Oh, should I go here or should I go here?" And I was like, my whole intention was to go somewhere else, and kinda last minute, I'm like, "You know what? I'm gonna go to the Rudder. I haven't been there in a minute." So I stop at the Rudder, and I go and just sit at the bar. I kid you not, one bar stool away is this man. He never even comes to Hendersonville, like, he is always in Nashville. I know that sounds weird. He's just not ever in that town, and I'm blown away, like, almost like seeing a ghost, like, how is this person here? And he the same looks at me, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And he is like, "Crazy story, like, after my mom passed away, like, I decided to reconnect with the rest of my family, and it was like a cousin got married, and then they invited him out on their boat the next day, and he was there because he was on their boat, so he was just having a drink at the bar before he went back to Nashville. What? Like, I I I don't even know. And so we talked and he told me, uh which weirdly, I had been doing some of my break from, like, my little sabbatical, and he was taking one of his own. He was taking like 7 months to do some traveling and touring and different things just to kind of like figure out his next step in life after his traumatic loss of his mother and his last parent. And it's crazy to me how sometimes in our lives it's like now we're both grieving these losses, like the timing's just off and all the discussions we had, like it all just made sense to me. And now he's at the same place I am where I never even the whole time that I knew him before, like we never ran into each other in Nashville at the same place ever. And then now you're just here in my city. Like it was just crazy. And I'm telling this story again to just reiterate that I am a big believer, and I hope that you can think back in things in your life that if we just kind of open ourselves up to all of the things that can come our way and say yes to more things, I mean, that we want to do, of course. But instead of letting like fear or I shouldn't do that or questioning, like that's the girl I was. And I feel like I've done a little bit of work to backstep that and go back into my old self of like not being good at being as carefree. And I want to go back to that because it's the place where you're just grateful for every moment. You're grateful for every experience. And so the best things come to you. And you kind of let go of expectations. Like you don't expect anything from others. And I don't mean you don't have healthy boundaries about what you need from people and or like what you won't tolerate. But like this man apologizing, I don't really know what he did other than he unless he thought that there was something more that I wanted from him that he didn't bring or give. But I mean, I was just at such a good mindset that I was just there with no expectations. And I loved getting to know his mind. And although it won't be anything in my life and it just was what it was, I feel like it is such a cool reminder to myself to think back on that story and how it's reason, season, lifetime that people are in your life. And the reason I think is still TBD for me. I think there's a lot that I could reflect on with that experience with him, but I feel like even from the other side of the coin, part of me hopes that my interaction with him brings something that he needed to his life. Maybe a different way that women can communicate with him. I don't know. Like, and we had something that was different. And I think sometimes when we open ourselves up to new experiences, we get just that. And so, as I'm in this world of saying yes, still for the plot, and maybe that wasn't the messiest of stories, but if you really think about it, I don't know what mindset I'm in half the time when I'm just like taking this chance where I feel like if you were the kind of person that watches those true crime shows, like I'm probably not, I'm probably like the girl that you would think, should watch those shows. But I believe most people are good. So, and that's been my experience. So I'm just going to keep going and leaning into most people are good and just going to vibe with them. So, I'm leaving all this just to say that and I'll kind of wrap it up with this thought that I saw recently that we really just the right people will come into your life, not because you force them, but because you invite them in with your authenticity. I think being authentically who we are and figuring out who that is for us and not feeling like we have to change or be someone we're not for someone is the purest, greatest way we can be. And when you do that and you lean into who you truly are, the right people will find you. You'll find the people that need to be around you, and you'll be around the people that you need. So, as you think about things in your life and your day, when you're like, you have the urge to do something, and not like a temptation, like kind of like an intuition, like, I should text that person. I should say hi to that person. I should apply for that job. I should this. And it's not like you're overthinking it. It's just suddenly the thought comes to you. Act on it. Because there's something inside of us that knows exactly where we need to be, who we need to bring into our lives. And when we don't take that action and trust those feelings, then we miss out on things or at least delay things that could be meant for us or are meant for us to experience. I feel like I've opened my whole mind to just a whole new world by having to start over, like a blank canvas. And so I don't want to miss an opportunity to paint with a different color. So I have to be open to whatever comes my way, knowing that it's going to be the most beautiful picture at the end of its time. When the canvas is full and my days are done, it's going to be something I look at and go, wow. I think that's what we can all hope for. So go paint with all the colors of the wind. And enjoy it. That's why we're here. Thank you for listening to Wandering the Wild Mess with Heather Morgan. You matter.